Hello everyone, I'm Antonio from The Odd Drain. Back in 2004, Triumph launched the original Rocket 3, and it was a very heavy bike, very cumbersome, but it had a massive engine. It was around 2200 cc's, which is huge for a motorcycle engine. They did that production for around 10 years, and then they launched this, the new Triumph Rocket 3. They completely redesigned the styling. It's a much more sleek looking bike. They worked on the tank to make it a little bit smaller, and they took the weight down from the original Triumph Rocket down 88 pounds. So we're in around the 750 pound range, which is extremely heavy for a motorcycle. And I'll be honest, I was a little nervous when I first got on it because of the weight. But once you're riding it, it's extremely nimble, which is really, really nice. And it's also very, very comfortable. I come from the world of sport bikes and super bikes, and I'm always really leaned over, and you know, an hour into your ride, you start to get really uncomfortable and your wrists start to hurt and your butt hurts and you're hot. But this is really, really nice. I might be turning into an old man if I start riding this more often. Now, typical of newer bikes, you have a ton of different rider modes. So if I hit this M here on the dash in front of me, I can go into sport, rider, rain, road. So basically each mode you can customize and suit for your riding needs. Again, with newer bikes, this has a ton of technology on it. So we have traction control, a quick shifter up and down with an auto blipper. If you don't know what an auto blipper is, it essentially blips the throttle for you when you downshift, which I can do manually. So if I upshift here, then I can blip it manually. But why would I have to do that when I have an auto blipper? So it's a really nice feature. Now, this Triumph has the biggest motor of any production motorcycle ever created. It's a 2500 cc motor, 3-cylinder. 2500 cc's! That's enormous. That's bigger than my car. Well, I drive a Mini Cooper, so I can't really comment on that. But that's still a huge motor for a motorcycle. Most big bikes like this you see maybe have 1000 cc, 1500 cc at the most, but not 2500 cc. One thing you'll notice when you're riding this is the amount of torque that this has. This has the most torque of any production motorcycle ever created. I'll demonstrate here in a minute. So you can see how much torque it has. I mean, this thing just goes. I'm used to riding Ducati motorcycles, which have a lot of torque. Generally with those bikes, you want to keep your weight over the front wheel. Not with this, you can just sit back and relax. It's like I'm riding a really fast sofa, which is funny. I'm totally not used to this. Now, the specific model that we're riding is the Rocket 3 TFC. TFC standing for Triumph Factory Customs. They're only going to make 750 of these. This is number 568 of 750. So what sets a TFC apart from a normal Rocket 3? Well, you get a ton of carbon fiber bits. Obviously the limited edition bike. These beautiful LED headlights. And you get a custom Arrow exhaust here on my right side, which sounds really, really nice. It's not too loud, but it's also not that quiet either. It's kind of the perfect amount of noise that you can have on a motorcycle. It's not too obnoxious, but it goes when you want it to. So the brakes that we have on board this beast are big Brembo monocoque brakes, and you definitely need to have those brakes, obviously for the amount of torque and the power that you have, but also for the weight of this bike. Like I said, it's very heavy, but turning it here, if I'm just going back and forth, you don't even notice the weight. The way that they balance the weight of the engine down low is really, really impressive. The comfort is really amazing on this bike. The seat is very, very soft. It's nice and cushioned. I can move back and forth no problem. It's very, very comfortable. Another thing, the mirrors. I can actually see out of the mirrors, and the faster I go, they don't really vibrate that much. The way that they're placed on the end of the bars here gives you a really nice position to what you can see behind you. Most sport bikes or cruisers maybe have them on top here, and it's totally not practical, but this is a really practical machine. Now this bike, I can only go to 4,000 RPM on it because it's brand new, has less than 200 miles. You'll see there's a graphic here on the tank on how quickly you can bring it up to. But that doesn't matter, you can short shift it. So third, now I'm in fourth, fifth, and it still has plenty of torque to kind of carry you out of the curve. Well, I'll give it a little bit of gas here. I mean, this thing is a beast. It really is a beast. These modern sport bikes, if you could even call this a sport bike, sport cruiser I'll call it. A lot of these bikes you got to be really careful, because if you're an amateur rider and you get a hold of one of these things, I mean, the power that they have, you really do have to be careful. Now, what's really nice about this bike is the quick shifter. It's extremely crisp. It's very, very easy to use. The auto blipper is great. One thing I don't really like about it, it's a little difficult for me to find neutral. Maybe because the gearbox is really new and needs to be broken in. But shifting it, I haven't received any false neutrals on shifting gears. So I'm really impressed with it. The text, so the dash is very, very easy to understand. I have a big rev counter in front of me with my speedometer. Makes it very, very easy to see. I can also, in the menu, I can navigate all the settings extremely easily. It's also got an auto light like most modern TFT dashes, so if the light changes, it'll change color, so it makes it easy for you to see. A lot of the early electronic dashes on these motorcycles were not that good and have been dated. But this is very easy to see, very easy to understand. You'll notice when you accelerate and get off the gas, there's a nice burble from the Arrow exhaust. Now the price point of this bike, it's around $30,000, which is pretty expensive for a motorcycle. But you know what? It's a really, really enjoyable ride. It's more power than you would ever need. And it's really comfortable. That's probably my biggest thing about this bike is the comfort. The comfort is amazing. While I'm navigating through traffic here, it's really, really easy if you just kind of keep your weight planted in the center. It just stays right there. Very, very maneuverable. Very enjoyable bike to ride, I must say. Another thing you'll notice about this, so this is shaft driven. It's not chain driven. So with a shaft driven motorcycle, actually your throttle response is a little bit more precise than you would on a chain driven bike. And if I accelerate, you see how jumpy it is. Suspension on this bike, so you got a 47 millimeter Showa suspension in the front, and it's a big unit. I'm looking at it now. It's a huge suspension unit, but you need to have that for the sheer size of the bike, and also when you're really getting on the brakes, you need to have that confidence and comfort in the front wheel. One of the most important things about riding motorcycles is your feeling on the front end of the bike. If you don't feel the front end of the bike, you're not going to have confidence for when you go into the curves. We'll go into some curves right now. So would I recommend getting a Triumph Rocket 3 or even this TFC? Certainly. The power is unbelievable. The quick shifter's great. The electronics are great. It's really, really nimble for a bike of this size. I'm really surprised at actually how easy it is to ride. I mentioned earlier you want to have confidence on the front end of the bike, and this bike gives you a lot of confidence on the front end. Even this long sweeper right here, it's so easy. I can take my hand off the bar and I just balance the weight. Even if I take both hands off the wheel, it's so balanced. It's a great bike. And the power, I'll mention the power again and again. The power is insane. Another feature of the electronics on this bike that's really enjoyable is it has a hill assist start. So if you're on an angle on a hill, it'll hold the rear brake. It'll hold the rear brake and won't let the rear end of the bike roll back. One less thing for you to think about while you're riding it, and especially with the weight of it on a hill, it's a nice feature that Triumph added. So the rubber on this bike, you have a 240 millimeter rear tire, which is massive. This thing looks like the Batmobile. So if you have the opportunity to ride one of these bikes, you should definitely do it. It's a great bike. It's a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one.
If you like these videos, let your friends know. Subscribe, comment, share.